Breaking news tonight. A political earthquake in Eastern Europe. Belarus is on the edge of collapse after top military generals turned against President Alexander Lukashenko, the man who has ruled the country with an iron grip for nearly 3 decades. What began as quiet whispers of dissatisfaction inside the military command has exploded into a full-scale rebellion that could change the face of Europe. Reports are pouring in from the Belarusian capital, Minsk, where explosions and gunfire have been heard near government buildings. Crowds of people are gathering on the streets, some cheering, others terrified as the fate of their nation hangs in the balance. According to multiple sources, several top-ranking generals, including the chief of staff and key regional commanders, refused Lukashenko's latest orders to suppress nationwide protests. These generals, once among his most trusted allies, have publicly declared that they no longer recognize Lukashenko as the legitimate leader of Belarus. They accuse him of corruption, election fraud, and betrayal of the Belarusian people. In an extraordinary development, convoys of armored vehicles were seen moving into the capital from the northern military bases early this morning. Eyewitnesses say that instead of protecting the government, the soldiers were arresting Lukashenko's loyal security officers. Television channels have gone dark across parts of the country, while social media has exploded with videos showing military trucks blocking roads and helicopters hovering over Minsk. The situation is changing by the minute. President Lukashenko, known for his defiant speeches and refusal to give up power, is reported to be hiding inside a heavily fortified bunker near the presidential palace. There are conflicting reports about whether he is negotiating with the rebel generals or preparing to flee the country. Some sources claim that his personal guards have switched sides, leaving him isolated and desperate. Others say he has called for help from Russia, appealing directly to President Vladimir Putin for immediate military assistance to restore control. But Russia, too, appears to be watching carefully before making any move. The Kremlin has released a cautious statement calling for stability and constitutional order in Belarus, but stopped short of promising direct intervention. Analysts believe Moscow is divided. While some Russian officials want to support Lukashenko, others fear that an unpopular rescue operation could trigger mass protests inside Russia itself. Across Europe, leaders are holding emergency meetings. NATO has called an urgent session in Brussels, warning that the Belarus crisis could have serious regional implications. Poland and Lithuania, which share borders with Belarus, have put their forces on high alert. Refugees are reportedly crossing the border into Lithuania as panic spreads among civilians who fear that full-scale conflict may erupt. Meanwhile, in the streets of Minsk, the atmosphere is electric and unpredictable. Thousands of people have gathered, waving red and white flags, the banned symbol of the old Belarusian Republic, and chanting freedom. Many see this as the moment they have waited for their entire lives. Others fear that chaos will only lead to bloodshed. Videos show soldiers lowering their weapons and joining the protesters, while others still loyal to Lukashenko clash violently with the crowd. Smoke rises above the city as fires burn near the parliament building. The air is filled with tension, confusion, and the sound of helicopters. For decades, Lukashenko has portrayed himself as the father of the nation, a man who kept Belarus stable while neighboring countries struggled with unrest. But now, it seems his own generals have decided his time is over. Political experts say this rebellion did not happen overnight. For years, cracks have been forming within the military as younger officers grew tired of serving a leader accused of rigging elections, silencing journalists, and crushing dissent. The turning point came when a leaked document revealed plans for mass arrests of opposition figures, including some officers' own family members. That betrayal ignited outrage within the army, leading to secret meetings and a coordinated plan to remove Lukashenko from power. According to insider reports, the general's plan was executed in 3 phases. First, they quietly took control of key military communication networks to prevent Lukashenko from issuing nationwide orders. Second, They secured regional bases to ensure that no loyalist reinforcements could enter Minsk, and finally they moved on the capital itself, surrounding government buildings and cutting off electricity and internet access. By the time Lukashenko realized the scale of the betrayal, it was already too late. His phone lines were down, his ministers unreachable, and his orders ignored. Around noon, the generals appeared on national television in a rare joint broadcast. In a calm but firm statement, they announced that the military was taking temporary control to restore democracy and protect the people from tyranny. They promised free elections within 6 months and called on citizens to remain peaceful. The broadcast lasted only 5 minutes before being abruptly cut off, but by then the message had spread across the nation. The people erupted, some celebrating what they called the end of the dictatorship, while others feared a dangerous power vacuum. International reaction has been swift. The European Union expressed support for the democratic aspirations of the Belarusian people, but urged restraint from both sides. The United States released a statement condemning any violence and warning against interference from outside powers. China, however, remains silent, a move analysts interpret as strategic patience while it observes whether the rebellion succeeds or collapses. Back in Minsk, sources close to the presidential palace describe scenes of panic and confusion. Lukashenko is said to have ordered his staff to destroy classified documents. Several of his ministers have already fled, while others have been detained by rebel soldiers. The once all-powerful leader now finds himself surrounded and abandoned. In a desperate attempt to address the nation, he appeared briefly on state television late in the afternoon, visibly shaken and angry. He called the generals traitors and vowed to crush the rebellion. "Belarus will never bow to conspirators," he shouted, his voice trembling. But his words did little to calm the chaos outside. As night fell, explosions were heard near the presidential compound. Witnesses reported that helicopters were seen evacuating top officials. Rebel units claimed to have taken control of the defense ministry, the state TV headquarters, and major airports. The entire capital city was effectively under martial law. Electricity in several districts was cut off. Citizens sheltered indoors, watching events unfold online and on foreign channels. At the same time, unconfirmed reports emerged that Lukashenko's motorcade attempted to flee toward the Russian border but was stopped by military roadblocks. Whether he is still in Belarus or has escaped remains unknown. Rebel sources claim he has been detained, while loyalist channels insist he is still in command. The fog of war and misinformation now dominates the media landscape. Experts warn that even if Lukashenko is overthrown, the road ahead for Belarus will be turbulent. The power struggle between military factions could easily spiral into civil war. The economy, already weakened by years of sanctions and isolation, could collapse completely. And the question of Russia's response remains the biggest wild card of all. If Moscow intervenes militarily, the crisis could spread beyond Belarus's borders, drawing in NATO and triggering the most dangerous standoff in Europe since the Cold War. Tonight, as we speak, Belarus stands at a crossroads. In the streets of Minsk, citizens are chanting for freedom while tanks patrol the boulevards. The sound of gunfire echoes across neighborhoods that were once peaceful. The internet is flooded with live streams, each one capturing a different angle of a nation in revolt. Parents are rushing to get their children to safety. Hospitals are filling with the injured. The world watches in disbelief as the unthinkable becomes reality, the fall of one of Europe's longest ruling leaders. For years, Lukashenko survived through fear and loyalty, but in the end, it was the people closest to him, the generals he trusted, who delivered the final blow. Their message to the world is clear. Belarus belongs to its people, not to a single man. Whether that promise holds true, or whether this moment leads to another dark chapter of instability, only time will tell. As dawn approaches, heavy smoke still rises above the capital. Rebel forces claim they are now in control of 80% of the city. The international community is preparing for emergency humanitarian aid. while Belarusian citizens brace for what comes next. Will democracy finally return to this long-suffering nation? Or will new powers simply replace the old? One thing is certain. History is unfolding before our eyes. The betrayal of Lukashenko by his own generals marks a turning point not just for Belarus but for the entire region. The echoes of this uprising will be felt in Moscow, in Brussels, and across every capital where people dare to challenge the men who claim absolute power. This is more than a coup. This is the moment when the fear of one man met the courage of an entire nation. And as the sun rises over Belarus, the world waits, holding its breath, to see whether freedom will finally break through the smoke. Sound FX news outro theme fading out. Screen flashes Belarus in crisis, developing story narrator closing. This has been a Global War Update. Stay tuned for more. Verified updates as this dramatic story continues to unfold. Subscribe, share, and stay informed, because the truth matters now more than ever.